a webinar for the Learning Initiative on Norms, Exploitation, and Abuse, which is a network hosted out of the Gender Violence and Health Center at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And we are having webinars every 2 months looking at social norms, structural factors, and child sexual exploitation, so covering sort of a range of topics every 2 months. Today, our presenters are Joanna Wodarczyk and Dorota Żurkowska from Nobody's Children Foundation in Poland. They're both PhD candidates and both work with Nobody's Children Foundation. Joanna is the coordinator of their research department, and Dorota is a research specialist. And they're going to be presenting today on a two-wave quantitative study that they conducted about attitudes and opinions among the population of people in Poland 15 years and older on the commercial sexual exploitation of children and youth. So Joanna will be speaking first, and she'll be talking about the methods, followed by Dorota speaking about the results. And then we'll have time for questions and answers at the end, and welcome everybody to participate in that. I will pass it over to Joanna, and we'll get started.
Hello, everyone. Very nice to have you here. We will talk about research on attitudes towards commercial sexual exploitation of children and youth in Poland. The research had two waves in 2011 and 2014, and we will present the results from both waves and sometimes present the differences between them. First of all, we started the survey because of the 2012 big football event in Poland, because we wanted to have a big social campaign about commercial sexual exploitation, and we wanted to know as much as we can before the campaign. Just for the beginning, this is the funding information. The survey was mostly funded by Oak Foundation, Saver Together, and European Commission within one of the projects. I will talk a little bit about methodology, and then Dorota will talk about results. So, as I told you, there were two waves of the study. First wave was in May and August 2011, and second wave October-November 2014. This is a survey on attitudes and opinions, quantitative study. There was a representative sample of the population of adult Poles from 15 years old. And in both ways, the method was computer-assisted personal interview. As you can see, the samples were similar in both ways. We wanted to know as much as we can about the commercial sexual exploitation. First of all, we have a problem how to define the problem. We were working on 4 types of commercial sexual behaviors, and those types are pocket money prostitution. As you can see, the question was a situation in which a boy or a girl, aged 16 to 17, engages in sexual relation with adult partner in return for gifts, for example, clothes, cosmetics, or electronic gadgets. The second type was transactional sex, and it was described as a situation when a boy or a girl engages in sexual relations with one partner, its so-called sponsor, in return for regular financial support. The third type was prostitution to survive, which is also sometimes called a basic needs prostitution. It was a situation in which a boy or a girl from a poor family engaged in sexual relations in return for means of subsistence, money for basic needs or education. And the last type was commercial cyber sex, was defined as a situation when a boy or a girl publishes his or her photos on the internet in return for a payment or other benefits. We distinguished those 4 types because we thought that it is important to, when we ask people what they think about the problem, to ask them about different situations, because, for example, prostitution to survive, it could be much different than pocket money prostitution, for example, in the eyes of the public. We ask questions about moral assessment of those situations, so what people think, if it is very bad or not. Case assessment, so how big the problem is in Poland, in their opinion. Motive assessment, so why do they think young people do that? What are the motives? High-risk groups, are there any risk factors or any group that especially can have a risk of being commercially exploited sexually. And the last question was about knowledge or support of the penalties concerning commercial sexual exploitation. It was the only question that was different in the first wave and in the second wave. In the first wave, it was the question about knowledge, and in the second wave, it was the question about support of the penalties that existed in Poland. But it will be Dorota will talk about it more later when she will talk about results. So now I pass to Dorota.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you, Joanna. And I would like to present you the results of our survey. I will focus in more detailed way on the second wave of our results, but there will be also some comparisons between the first and the second wave, so you can just compare them and look at the trends among Poles, and I hope you will find it interesting. So now moving to the next slide, I would like to talk about the first block of questions, and it concerns the moral assessment of the described situations that Joanna told us about earlier. And the respondents were asked to assess those behaviors on a 5-point scale, which was that in the 1 stated for this behavior is not bad at all, and 5, this behavior is very bad. And as you can see, the scale itself is quite negative, but as you can see from the graph, all of those situations received a highly negative moral assessment of Poles. The most strongly condemned behavior was the pocket money prostitution. 82% of adult Poles said that this behavior is very bad, and relatively the least condemned of all behaviors was prostitution to survive, but still 73%, so almost 3/4 of Poles said that this behavior is very bad. And looking at those results, we can see how important it was to divide this kind of sexual commercial behaviors into different types, because as we can see, the pocket money prostitution and prostitution to survive differs in the terms of opinion among Poles, which is quite interesting for researchers and also quite interesting to analyze this problem in Poland. And now we will move to the next slide, and you will see the comparison of results from the first and the second wave of our research. And this graph shows only the percentage of answers 5, this behavior is very bad, so only these most negative assessments. As you can see, the highly negative moral assessment of all those situations is quite a constant trend among Poles over the years. We can see some differences. They are quite slight, not more than 2% points, and actually the moral assessment it hasn't changed a lot over the years. The next slide is based on the results of the second block of questions, because we also asked Poles about their opinion, their assessment of the scale of this problem in Poland. So they could choose 3 options. The first one was that this problem is almost not existent in Poland. The second one was that it's only marginal and true for very few people. And the third option was that it's a real problem that affects many people, so that this is the real problem and probably that it's maybe worth giving attention to it. Also, there was, of course, the option to not answer this question, to say it's hard to say, and as we can see on the graph, it was quite relatively popular. And as we can see from the results from 2014, all of the behaviors were assessed in quite a similar way. At least every second Pole considered all the presented problems as real problems that affect many people, that are true for many people. And relatively most frequent behavior was the pocket money prostitution, of course, in the eyes of Polish society. 56% of our respondents said that this is a real true problem for many people. On the next slide, we will see the comparison of results from the first and the second wave of our research. And as you can see here also, we can talk about some kind of quite constant trend among polls over those years, because also we have here very slight differences between the first and the second wave of our survey. And what is worth saying, this graph shows only the percentage of answer. It's a real problem true for many people. Yes, we focus only on this option. Now we will move to the next aspect, which may be quite interesting for you, I think, because we asked polls why, in their opinion, young people engage in commercial sexual relations. And here it was more general question about all of those behaviors, not they didn't answer it for every type separately, but all of them, let's say. And as you can see, we have here the comparison of results from the 2011 and 2014. And the order, this kind of rating of indicated reasons, have not changed over those years. Of course, there are differences in the distribution of answers, the percentages, but the order of them is stayed not changed. And the most frequent answer was that young people want to have fashionable clothes, cosmetics, or gadgets, which is somehow connected with the definition of pocket money prostitution, as Joanna said earlier. And the second motive that was pointed out quite often by our respondents was that those people, those young people, children, are forced to engage in this kind of sexual behaviors because of their difficult life situation. Of course, we have also another answers, and those are that young people do it because they want to impress their peers, because they are curious and want to have adventures, and also that they are forced to do it, but someone else. But as you can see, here we have only 10% in 2014, and in 2011, in the first wave of our survey, it was 15%. So here we have a small but a decrease. On the next slide, we will see the question which was quite important for us, because we asked polls whether there are some high-risk groups, the groups in which children and young people have the higher risk to engage in this kind of sexual behaviors, commercial sexual behaviors, and respondents could choose one of two options. The first one was that the risk of engaging in sexual activity in exchange for payment or other benefits is the same among children and young people in all environments and groups. So actually that those groups don't exist. And the other option was that in some groups of children and young people there is a higher risk of engaging in those activities, so that these groups do exist. And here we have results from 2014. We showed only those from 2014 because in 2011 we got the same result. 49% of polls in both waves in 2011 and 2014 said that in some groups of children and young people there is a higher risk of engaging in those activities. So majority of polls, almost half of them, said that there are those groups, and then we asked those people, those respondents who claimed that those groups exist, what kind of groups there are. And on the next slide we will see the high-risk groups, and here you should notice that the sample size is smaller than the whole sample because of this asking question only to people who said that the risk groups exist. So here we can see the comparison of the results from 2011 and 2014. And as you can see, the order of those groups, we'll talk about them in a minute, stayed not changed, but actually the percentages are different. The distribution of answers is quite different, so it's actually worth noting. And the main group that polls consider as a high-risk group are children and young people from pathological or troubled families. And in 2011, 64% of our respondents said that this is the high-risk group, and in 2014, so in the second wave, 57% of respondents said that it is a high-risk group. And the second high-risk group are children and young people from poor families. And here we can also think about this basic needs prostitution, and we can see that those high-risk groups may be somehow related in our respondents' minds with different kinds of commercial sexual behaviors. The third group, which is quite interesting, were the children and young people from families where parents have no time for their children. And here we can see some changes in the distribution of answers. In 2011, 39% of our respondents said that this is a high-risk group, and in 2014, only 29% of them claimed that. Here we have also another two groups, which were less frequently chosen by our respondents. Children and young people from families where parents don't talk to their children about sexuality. The same 10% in the first and the second wave of our research. And also persons with the experience of child sexual abuse. And here we have also some changes. In 2011, it was 9%. In 2014, so in the second wave, it was only 5%. So as you can see, a question where respondents could choose multiple answers. So it's worth remembering when you think about those results. Here, just like Joanna said, we have this aspect of Polish law according to this problem. And in the second wave, we asked about opinion. Do you think the following behaviors should be punishable? And in the first wave, we asked the question which concerned the knowledge of Polish society about the legislation related to the problem. So we can't compare those results because the question was different. But now I will talk a little bit about these results from 2014, and then I will tell you about the results from 2011 from the first wave. So in 2014, the vast majority of our respondents said that those behaviors should be punishable. And here you can see on the graph only those percentage of answers that should be punishable, because they could also use that they shouldn't be. Okay. So 94% of Poles, adult Poles, said that using sexual services provided by persons of 15 to 18 years old in exchange for payment or other benefits, when such contact is initiated by the client, should be punishable. And when this contact is initiated by the child, the minor, 89% of our respondents said that still it should be punishable. And we also have this answer, 88% said that it should be punishable about providing sexual services by persons of 15 to 18 in exchange for payment or other benefits. As you can see, both provision and the use of these services should be punishable in the eyes of the vast majority of our respondents. And those are the results for 2014. And in 2011, as I said, and Joanna said earlier, we asked the respondents whether those behaviors are punishable according to the binding Polish law. So it was the question about knowledge. And the vast majority of our respondents in 2011 claimed that all of them were punishable. At least 70% of respondents said that they are punishable, and actually we looked at those results, the knowledge of Polish society, and looked at the binding legislation. And in 2011, according to the Polish law, this provision of sexual services by persons of 15 to 18 years old in return for money or other type of benefits wasn't punishable. And the two other behaviors were differently punishable because when the child initiates the contact, this behavior was not punishable, and when the adult initiates this contact, it was punishable when a minor was pushed or forced to perform these commercial sexual relations. Most of the respondents, more than 70% in every kind of this situation, said that it is punishable, but according to the law, it wasn't in every kind of a situation. And it's worth noting that now the Polish law is stricter against adults, that it changed. But you have to remember when you look at our results from 2014 that here we didn't ask about the knowledge, but we asked about the opinion. Should it be punishable? So that's why we can't compare those two ways and those questions. And actually, this is all the results I wanted to show you. It's all the results we get from our research. On the next slide, you will see our emails and our foundation website address. But I think that now we have quite a lot of time for the questions and remarks you may have. So I think please join the discussion, and thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So as Dorota said, we have quite a bit of time for questions and answers. A few questions have come in. I'm just kind of looking through those. Anna Maria, I'm not sure if you could unmute yourself if you'd like to ask your question in person. You can unmute with *7.
Thank you, Joanna and Dorota, for a very interesting presentation. I have a couple of questions. One is it's more conceptual. I would love to hear of how you came up with this typology for the different kinds of activities, the pocket money or survival. And did you base that in other studies, or how did you come up with that? And also, I'm not sure, I missed the beginning, so I'm not sure if you presented on the demographics of the samples and if you compared both samples in both ways to see if they were equivalent or they had differences in their demographics or the composition of the sample. And maybe you can talk a bit about the sample size. And lastly, I would like to know if those differences you are referring to in the both ways were statistically significant or they were more descriptive.
I can answer the question about the types. We worked on the types basing on literature. We established those 4 types from the literature, and of course the questions we were working on questions by ourselves, but the types of the commercial sexual exploitation were from the literature and the researches that we know are done earlier.
Okay, and if it's all, maybe we'll back to this, but according to the sample size and this sample characteristics, I don't know, maybe back to the slide number 4, but actually samples in both waves were carried out, the survey was carried out on the representative sample of the population of adult Poles aged 15 plus. So all the characteristics were designed this way to have the representative sample of adult Poles, so we can compare those results from the first and from the second wave, because we wanted to have the similar samples, both representative, and also the same way of asking questions, the same questionnaire. So it gives us this kind of permission to compare the results. And according to the differences, they are more in the descriptive way. You asked about the significance in terms of statistics, but here I was talking about them more in a descriptive way, like you said. I don't know if you're satisfied with our answers. We may look for another question.
This is Rebecca, and I was just going to ask a follow-up question on the characteristics of the sample, and I was just wondering where did you draw your sample from, or where did you find respondents? How did you draw them in order to get the representative sample? Okay, so the research was carried out by a research company that worked on the CAPI method, so computer-assisted personal interview, and they provided us representative sample of the population of adult Poles. So they took into account different characteristics, like it wasn't the online survey, so we had respondents from different regions of Poland and also with different levels of education, different gender and age, and so on. So the sample started the age, it was 15 plus, only the adult Poles, and on slide number 4 you can see that the sample size, that in the first wave it was 1,012 and in the second was 988 persons. Okay, and Letitia from Childhood Brazil, it looks like had a question as well. Was your question answered, or did you have any follow-up questions?
Hi. Okay, well, yeah, I think in general the question was answered. However, we have another question. Could we do this now, or should we wait another moment to ask the question?
No, please, go ahead. Yep.
Okay, so this is Rodrigo. I am here with Letitia. I'm from Childhood Brazil as well. We were just wondering the objective of this research and what's going to be done with this information that was kept here, if something's going to be done. I don't know.
Okay, maybe Joanna, you could say about, because you started to tell about this big event, football event in Poland that was in 2012, because actually we had this campaign about against the commercial sexual abuse in Poland.
Yeah, we have this social campaign because a lot of surveys shows that in big sports events there are more risks for young people to be commercially sexually exploited. So we wanted to have this campaign. It was mostly for men to not engage in any sexual activities with mostly young girls, and this survey was some base for this campaign to know how we should provide this information. But also we wanted to know, because in Poland there were no such studies before, so it was the first time, and we wanted to know how the Poles think about this problem morally, what they think that there is, how big is the scale, and so on. So because one of our program in our organization is focused on this problem, or on commercial sexual abuse. So it was very useful for us, because in many campaigns and in many our activities we can learn from this study how to talk to the public, how to talk to young people, because Dorota we didn't have time to show it, but we also analyzed the differences in answers between young people and adults. So yeah, mostly.
Okay. No, because it's very interesting, but because in Brazil maybe we have not the same kind of behavior, but people, when you ask them about this type of sexual behavior, usually they say, okay, I don't approve that, but at the same time, the commerce is going on, so people are paying for that. So they say, no, I don't agree with that, but at the same time, adults are paying for this type of commerce or sex. So this is what I wanted to understand, why people say no, but at the same time they are paying for the services, because here in Poland, I think that it's the same problem. People are paying for that. So there are clients for this type of commerce, let's say. So there is a difference here that I would like to understand, and I don't know if you have researched that, but why are people saying no, and at the same time this is going on? Because here you are representing the population, as I understand it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but to answer that question, you will need to do a qualitative study, not quantitative, because this is the question is why, and you have to you don't really have those answers in quantitative study. So it's a very important question, and probably it needed to be done this survey on this question.
I just have one last question. It would be interesting to know more about the concept of punishment that you used in the survey. So it was more in terms of social punishment or moral punishment, or really enforcement or legal punishment. So when you say, perhaps maybe I didn't understand well, but one of the results is that the respondents think that the children that are involved or in sexual exploitation, they should be punished. Was that right?
We are talking about the punishment by the law, like the imprisonment.
Okay.
Yes, by the law. So yes, it's the result is that because I think that you're referring to this answer when in 2014. 88% of respondents said that providing sexual services by persons of 15 to 18 in exchange for payment or other benefits should be punishable by the law. So actually, yes, it's.
Okay.
And here we didn't specify what kind of punishment. We know that punishable by the law, so like imprisonment, the fine, community service, something like this, but the respondents didn't actually have the opportunity to tell us how they should be punished, the specified way.
And it looks like there's a question next from Jordan Greenbaum, if you'd like to unmute yourself with *7 and ask.
I wanted to just congratulate you on your study. I think you did a lot of work, and it's very nicely organized. I was listening with interest to the conversation about why people say this is a bad thing and yet go on to purchase the sex. And I'm wondering whether, you're right, it would be a qualitative study, but I wonder if there would be some information you could glean if you could break down the samples in different ways, especially if you could combine the two samples, that'd be 2,000 subjects. If you could look at them by age group, for example, and see if the attitudes are different between young and older people, gender differences, or even geographic differences, rural versus urban location. Might be sort of interesting to break it down a little bit and see the characteristics within the population and their opinions and views.
I think it's a great idea, and it's also just like Joanna said that maybe it wasn't exactly the type and the exact question that we asked because of this method, and that it should be researched in different ways, maybe with qualitative studies, but here, because of the quite a short time, we wanted to show you those comparisons also between first and the second wave. So we didn't divided those groups into smaller groups by the age, the gender, and so on. But actually, the report from the first wave of the research is available online. And there you can see those results from 2011, divided for the older and younger respondents. So you can also look at this. There's a lot of details, and I think the link to this report it's in PDF, so you can download it and read it if you would like to. It was somewhere on this invitation for our webinar, so you may find it, or you may contact us, and I will just send it to you if you'd like.
Like Anna Maria, you had a question again, another question that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, another question is, you say that you organized these surveys around the sporting event. So did the 2 waves were before and after your intervention? And this links to my question that if you had any hypotheses of this slight changes you found in some of your answers. For example, I think you found some differences in the vulnerability of certain children to the situation, or the fact of having parents that don't have time with their children or not. Do you have differences in those 2 years? Do you have any hypothesis of why this changes, or are you saying or relating it to the intervention you did?
Okay, so I think that actually the results show not really big significant changes. As we looked at those results, for example, the moral assessment of those behaviors, all of them was highly negative, and it really didn't change over the years. I think that if you would like to talk about differences before and after this campaign that Joanna told us about, we would have to have results from, for example, 2011 and 2012, like the pre and the post test, to look at the results which were just before and after the campaign. And this campaign was, like Jana said, the goal of this campaign was the prevention of the sexual abuse because of the higher risk of existence of it because of this big Poland and Ukraine UEFA or European football championships. So I think that we cannot say that the changes in the results are because of the campaign or in these terms, but we think that those results, there are not big differences between them, which somehow shows us that the samples were similar. I don't know if you can clearly understand what I'm saying, but sometimes when you make research and just then you repeat it after the years and the results are so different, you can explain it. Because, for example, the difference is because the sample wasn't chosen good enough. And I think that we didn't analyze in terms of the reason of changes, but somehow, let's say we were satisfied that there are no so big changes, that the samples were chosen right and that they were representative for the Polish society.
I guess I did have one more question I wanted to ask just about the methodology. I was wondering if you could talk just a little bit about how you came up with the phrasing of the questions, like a little bit just about your process of developing the questions in the survey.
So we have the research team. There were a few people in this research team, and when we first worked on the research questions and then tried to establish the question that we would gonna ask the people. And then when we have first drafts of those questions, we consult them with psychologists and also, as I remember, consult with some other people, as a small pilot study to get to know if they understand them as we want them to understand. And then we changed some aspects of those questions, and then also work on them in our research team, and that was merely the process on working on those questions.
So, and were there any resources that you would want to mention that you found helpful? Just thinking for other people that might be conducting similar research, are there other resources or surveys, or was it really kind of starting from scratch and just thinking through how to ask?
I think in one of our links that we sent before the webinar, there is the information about some literature that we based on. But also in Poland there is no articles and researches on that subject. So we also worked because in our team, research team, were also people who worked this problem. So we have also this practical input.
Okay. Any other final questions or anything else that Joanna and Dorota that you would like to add before we wrap up?
I think that if there will be any questions that will just appear later, you can contact us by the email, or you can look at this report that I will send once more a link to. So maybe, if not now, we are open to contact, and please don't hesitate to contact us.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation and for sharing your results. And we will send out the link to the 2011 study and also look forward to, I imagine there will eventually be a report on the 2014 study as well. So, we can share that through the LINEA network too, and we'll look forward to seeing your analysis. So thank you again, Joanna and Dorota, and thank you, everyone. We look forward to talking with you again in April.